I want to hear some Final Fantasy because you finished that.
Oh my god!
And I have
Throwing
no fucking
curveballs
clue
here.
when I'll ever get back to that. So I want to know.
Well, yeah, we spoke about
what
this,
you thought of it.
this busy year, and I think if you hearing me talk about Final Fantasy for the first time, go back. I've spoken about it plenty over the last 2 or 3 episodes, however long we've been talking about it.
Doing some check-ins here and there.
So just to recap though, Final Fantasy Rebirth is the second game in a planned trilogy, and it is an expanded like it's a bigger version of Remake, which was part 1 that came before it. In that, Remake felt almost more linear, like there were sort of hubs and whatever, whereas Rebirth is like, okay, we're putting this game in the open world. And I think it's pretty successful in translating that over. Like, I know there's been criticism thrown at the game in that there's a lot of busy work. Like, it falls into that Ubisoft trap of, there's a tower over there, you should go climb it and activate it. And I acknowledge that. Like, is it necessary? Probably not. All that said, though, I feel that Rebirth is a game that anyone can pick up and enjoy. But if you're a fan and you've played the original, I feel that there's just so much love and fan service poured into this game that, like, I've said it a million times, most of my playthrough, I was just sitting there going, like, I can't believe this game exists. Like, it felt like they've thrown everything in the kitchen sink in, from cutscenes to characters to reimagining certain areas to expanding existing areas. I mean, like, you've played the beginning, Calm. I've said, oh wow, a wildcat.
Yeah, well, I'm just ignoring
like,
it.
I remember Calm in the original is just this, like, kind of throwaway town where Cloud talks about
Calm is
Sephiroth.
the very first city you start
The first
at,
city, yeah.
correct?
And it is,
Yeah.
like, you literally arrive there, you go to the inn, you play through the cutscene where Cloud talks about
the
Nibelheim and Sephiroth, and
the
then
flashback,
you
yeah.
move on. Like, that's what it is in the original. There's nothing else there. But in this game, when you start, it's like, it's this huge, bustling city. It's dense.
Massive,
I still stand by what I've said with Remake, that Final Fantasy nails the feeling that they nail that thing that it feels like a place is alive, where you can walk in and there's just like dozens of people and they're all having, I know they repeat their lines, don't get me wrong, like, but the fact that it's that dense and bustling, and that's just the whole game from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Every city you go to is this expanded version of the original, and it's really like they've put a lot of effort into this. And I think the devs, like, they have to have been fans themselves. You don't just arrive in this project and like make this. I think a lot of them must have been like either worked in the original Final Fantasy or have just been fans big enough that, they work on this, there's just everything in the kitchen sink thrown in. And then, it's expanded over Remake in that you've got more party members to play with. Whereas Remake was very much like, well, this part of the story you're playing with Tifa and Barrett. This part of the story you're playing with just Aerith and your party. Yeah, I mean...
Oh, you're right. I actually didn't think about that. In Remake, you didn't have party construction. It was always limited
like
to what the story gave
forced
you.
on what was given to you. And here, like, I could be wrong, but I think there's like there's only a handful of moments in the game where you are forced to play with like a certain character.
Yeah, that's kind of like at the beginning. I know when you enter the mines, you're given that portion where you have to play with Aerith and Tifa as Cloud, and then straight after that, it's just Barrett and Red, essentially.
Yeah, so there are certain instances of that, but for the most part, it's free reign. Like, even certain story beats, it's like, well, this story beat's focusing on this person, but you can have anyone in your party. And like the side quest has Barrett, okay, but you don't have to have Barrett in your party. He just pops up in his cutscenes. It's actually quite funny whenever you're in battle. I don't know if you've noticed, even like if you're in the open world, you'll have your core 3 people, but you still see your other party members on like the outskirts, like fighting alongside you, which is a cool little touch.
I love it. They're still exploring with you. It's not like they go invisible and disappear.
No.
They're like running around with you. They're just not the ones you control in battle.
I absolutely love this game. I think the ending was interesting. I get why it upset people, because I think a lot of people are like, I loved the game right up until the end.
So can you? I mean, I assume it's difficult to give specifics, obviously, without completely spoiling it. But like the sort of vibe. Okay, so like if you haven't played the game and you want absolutely zero to know about the ending, I'm not going to ask you like to play it out for me beat by beat. But I've read GameSpot's review when it came out. Timur kind of like did a rough explanation of why he didn't like it, and in doing so had to like give up certain details to, you know, get that point across. So I kind of understand that it's not identical to the original game.
Yeah.
So if you want to stop listening now for the next like 2 minutes, you're more than welcome to. So in Remake, you right at the end, you fight against essentially fate itself. It's those dudes, and there is a force in the game that is trying to keep Cloud, Tifa, everyone on this predetermined track, which is essentially the original game. Yeah. And at the end of Remake, you essentially break free from fate, and that's why Rebirth is allowed to go into territory that wasn't covered by the game, because this is essentially now a parallel
it's like a
universe.
Path,
but it's a parallel universe that is still where there is some force that is trying to get it to converge with the original timeline. So my understanding of the end of it's a very complicated, but also I find very interesting way of telling a story that you are remaking rather than just retelling the story beat for beat. I love it. I think it's cool. I know some people like, wow, this game turned into fucking Kingdom Hearts, you know? And I guess I should play Kingdom Hearts now because this all sounds very fascinating to me. So my understanding of the ending of Rebirth is that it plays out the events from the game, which is probably one of the most famous scenes in gaming history, I would say. But that obviously they tie some sort of like trying to reconverge with the original story into that, and in doing so fundamentally changes the feel and vibe of that scene. Now, I don't know if that means if the fates of particular characters is kept intact or not, but I can kind of see why people might be mad that that particular scene was messed with. If so, is that sort of your feeling on that?
No, look, I think,
or am I even right? Put it that way.
No, you are right. It's just maybe people expected something, and like don't read into this too much, but maybe people expected something different, or they wanted it to play out differently, or to be conveyed differently. I don't know, like when I finished the game and I thought back on that scene, it was a lot to take in, because when you play that last hour of the game, there's just so much happening. Like think of the last hour of Remake, where it's the same thing. You're like on the highway, then they're like, well, we're going to defeat fate itself. You're like, whoa, where did this come from? Like this is quite a, and you fight Sephiroth, spoiler, in the first game, which didn't happen in the original.
Yes.
So this is on that level of there's a lot of stuff happening and it's a lot to take in. But yeah, I guess Timur's right in that there's this thing of the first game they're trying to break away from, you know, the beaten path or the existing path. And you think like, oh my God, Rebirth's going to change everything. And it does change certain things. But there is this sort of thing at the end where it's like, no, we're coming back to... Like, they pull it apart and they kind of like start bringing it back. And like, but wait, what happens with the third game then? Does that mean we're just going to get like what we know? Or does that mean that the third game's going to be different? Like, I can't really explain it without spoiling. So I've got this weird cough. I don't know, like I can understand why it would maybe upset some fans, purely because, like I said, maybe they expected things to, and I'm not talking about the dead specifically, but maybe they expected things to play out differently or to play exactly the same. Like, I don't know. I think when you're making a game like this, the expectations are just so high, you're going to piss people off regardless.
I think that's totally true. With the way that they set up Remake and the way that they set up this trilogy, like there was never going to be a situation where everyone was happy with the scene.
Yeah,
because
100%.
Because it is so like it is so famous, and the way it made people feel at the time in the original is so like people hold on to that memory because it was so unexpected. It was like a Game of Thrones moment, like decades before Game of Thrones 100%. Ever happened.
I also think in games like people just didn't die necessarily, so to see that it's like, oh my god, like how did this happen?
And I think also in the first game it was so detrimental because it's like you could have been relying on a particular character for like 2/3 of the game, and then suddenly they're gone, and it's like, well, how do I restructure my playthrough now to actually get to the end? Where that's not really a problem with this game. I don't think that really changes the vibe of the scene, but it's like that's why people remember this. That's why it was so impactful at the time.
I think what I will say is that it still was very impactful. Like I loved I want to replay that last chapter, but I came away from it going like, shit, I really enjoyed that. It's like, again, I get why people might not vibe with it, but overall, like I was quite happy with it. I've got many questions because like at the end of the first game, there's a bit of head scratching. Like, well, what actually happened?
Oh god, yeah.
And there's a lot of discourse.
I had to read up on it because I had very little clue what was happening.
And it's the same. Yeah, there's discourse on like, well, what actually happened? Like, did Cloud do this? Did he not do this? Is this what happened? Was this all like? There's a lot of people putting theories out there, and I think that's also intentional, right? It's the creators are like, well, we're not going to tell you. You're going to question, and
But I think that's fascinating. Like, if you get conversations like that to exist, that means you've done a good job, I think. As opposed to being like everyone knows exactly what happened and everyone can agree on that,
But I mean, that's why games like Bloodborne are so fascinating, because it's not a definitive, oh, this is what happened. It's like, well, we have a baseline structure, but what does this actually mean? And I think, look, I'm not saying this is Bloodborne, like, don't get me wrong, but I think this last bit is like, there's a lot of room for interpretation of like, well, what is actually happening here. But all in all, like,
so what you're telling me is at the end, Cloud summons the Blood Moon, and then
he fights good.
Rom the vacuous spider bites Sephiroth's head off and becomes the new big bad.
I can't believe you predicted that. How did you?
Incredible. Just, wow.
It's just
hat tip to Square Enix and From Software for sorting that
out, so bold of them. No, but look, I think all in all, I love Rebirth. It's a long game. If you want to see everything from top to bottom, like my playthrough was 105 hours, and that's when I say Jesus. I did everything, like all the mini games, all the and this is all normal mode. The hard mode has other stuff, but I did all the Colosseum battles, like all the side games in the Golden Saucer, all the side quests. Like I ticked everything off 100% of the normal playthrough. If you want to fast track it though, like I'm pretty sure you could do it in, I'd say 30 to 40 hours, because if I think there's maybe, I think it's 15 or 16 chapters, and each one is about like 2, maybe 3 hours, depending on what's happening. So
yes,
your mileage will vary based on, what do you want from this game? Do you just want to play through the story? By all means. I mean, some of the side quests are laughable, like in a way that only Square Enix could make a bloody side quest. Like, one side quest is you going to find a missing cat and bringing them home. Like this is key storytelling. I'm here for it, don't get me wrong, but it's like the world's, you're chasing Sephiroth, but also you need to get the stray cat home.
Yep. The age old. I mean, have you watched Fallout yet?
Yeah, I've seen Fallout. Yeah.
Yeah, that throwaway line where he's like, what does he say? Thou shalt get sidetracked by unimportant bullshit or something like that. It's like
that's
being fully aware that there is a main quest here, but like acknowledging that it's not actually that time sensitive or something, or as time sensitive as the story makes it out to be. I mean, I think that's a lot of the friction with the game. Like, I'm having a tough time getting into it in the same way that I did Remake, and I think it comes down to the open world fluff. I don't
100%.
think the open world is a good open world. I think Square Enix, obviously, this is at least this team's first attempt at that, and I think they've done what the like modern standard of the industry is for a open world. It's a typical Ubisoft tick box with like a bajillion mini games. But I think the last time we spoke about this, your advice like to focus on the core ones that help you get through the story, like getting particular summons or upgrading certain materia, and just kind of like not focusing on the rest. Yeah. Because each open area has so many things to do that you will spend hours between major story beats, and it just messes with the pacing completely. So I think that's what I'm going to do when I do get back to it, is just focus more on the narrative than anything else, because otherwise I don't see myself enjoying this for the same 100 hours that you did.
No. And again, like, remember, it's who's playing it, right? Like you've never played the original, so like I guess you couldn't be bothered going like, well, I want the most of this game.
The little details are lost on me.
They're lost
so
but like the story itself, I think, is worth playing. It's, if you enjoyed Remake, it's, to me, it's a no-brainer. Like, you're getting more of that with more
and that's
characters.
What I'm there for. Like, I love the combat system and I love the story. So I love engaging with those two things. And if the open world stuff is not vibing with me, I think that's fine. I think the fact that the game is completely fine with you skipping that stuff is good. I think if they forced you to do a lot of that stuff, that would suck.
I could be wrong, but I don't think any main content is gated off in the traditional sense of like, oh, come back after you've built a better relationship with whoever or done 3 side quests. I think it is, you can just go for it.
I do know you miss out on some of that stuff, because some of the character specific side quests like unlock relationships with your party members that obviously accentuate some story beats. But again, you can do that stuff without being like, I want to check off every monster analysis thing on the map or tower or this or that. Like, you can definitely not play every single game of Queen's Blood, although that is the one mini game I do enjoy playing.
Queen's Blood is good. When I played as, I was like, am I going to play am I going to do every Queen's Blood challenge? And I did, because
no, it's so good. But it's the same as The Witcher. Like, The Witcher 3 had all this superfluous bullshit on the like periphery, like Gwent tournaments and this and that, and I don't think trying to check off everything on that map was, the correct way to play that game. No. But it is the fact that it's 9 years after that, and this game in structure from its open worlds feels very similar to that. That's why it feels a bit
100%.
But I don't think that takes away from it being a great game. I do genuinely think this is a phenomenal game. Yeah.
It's interesting though, because I know you speak of the open world being the worst parts, and I've thought about it now, and like I love Rebirth, but a part of me wonders, like, did I enjoy Remake more? Like, objectively, and it's interesting because maybe Remake holds a different place in my heart purely because it was the first time going like, holy shit, this is unreal how they've remade this. But there's also something special in the fact that, like we said, it's funny because for me a perk of this game is you get to build your own party. But then I think of Remake, when you're forced to play with a certain party, it felt like the narrative was tighter. It's like, cool, you've got Tifa and Aerith here, they're the ones talking to you, whatever. Like, it's very specific to that. And it's not that that's not present in Rebirth, but it just feels like maybe it is a bit tighter on that side, like maybe a bit more focused. I just think the scope of this game is huge, but the fact that they pulled it off is like what surprised me, because I couldn't envision how you go from Remake, which was like this closed world, to putting it in the open world and making it still work. And it does work, even though there are dated mechanics. It's unreal that that they've just translated it, because like I honestly couldn't envision it. In my head, I was like, I just can't imagine an open world Final Fantasy VII. It's going to fall apart, and I'm not surprised, at least.
I get you. I think I've had the same thoughts about, did I enjoy Remake more? And I mean, I remember I love Remake. If you ask me today whether you should play that game, it's like absolutely yes. But even then, I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff here that's forced upon you that feels very padded. Yeah. And that game in total, like, I did everything in that game, and that took like 40 hours.
Yeah.
And I think the difference there is that there's parts of Remake that feel padded that you cannot skip.
Yeah.
Like, they are critical to like the main path, and those are far more annoying than things in Rebirth that make my brain go, you should probably do this just to tick off a list, but it's not actually required. So there's a bit of it's odd. I do miss the linear approach of Remake just because I feel it's more focused. But at the same time, when Rebirth does push you to those instances of a focused story, like the mine section that sits between Junon and, was it Calm, or that other open area?
The grasslands,
The grasslands, like that feels like the Final Fantasy VII Remake Rebirth experience that I want more of.
Focused, Yeah, I think you 100% just skip the open world stuff. Just, mainline through it. I don't see the harm.
The less I hear of Chadley, the better.
Poor Chadley. He just wants dating.
I have seen that little animation of Cloud whipping out that little gun intercom thing and talking to Chadley more than enough already. And it's so annoying because you can see when it's going to happen, because you do something and you press or you try and flick the analog stick to move, and Cloud just does not respond. And it's like, oh, he's going to pull out his fucking cell phone. Cool.
Let's have a look.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
It's good.
So,
I would recommend.
It is good. It is a great game. I know I talk shit about certain parts, but I mean, that's what I think a good game forces that critique, but you want it to be better.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's not good. I think it's a great game still.
I'd be interested to know what they do. Well, what the third part looks like, because maybe they take this criticism to heart and they rein in the open world stuff. Like, I think there will definitely be open world. They can't take that away now.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a established thing for now.
Yeah, maybe there'll be less busy work, for example. Maybe they'll tighten it up. I don't know. We'll see.
There's a lot, as far as I can tell, again, not having played the original game and just knowing broad strokes of its story. My perception from people online is that there is still a lot to adapt in the final game.
Plenty.
So that's interesting because Remake adapted a very small portion of the game, and Rebirth obviously adapts more, but it feels like there's still half of the original game to adapt in a third of this Remake trilogy.
The closer I got to the end, the more I realized I'm like, they have left a lot. Because even that, getting to the end of this game, I was like, you're going to see the whole world, and the third game will just be you revisiting those places. They've left a lot for that third game, let me tell you.
It's a tough ask, I think, then, for them to kind of wrap that up.
Yeah.
So, good luck to them. I just hope that doesn't mean they go, well, this game is now 200 hours. That would be the exact wrong approach.
Rein it in. No, they can't do that. Don't do that.
Maybe try fit more content into the same 100-hour playthrough so it feels maybe less padded, better paced. I would vibe with that.
You know what I'm excited for is the future where all three games are out and then they release the trilogy pack and you can play from beginning to end.
Yeah. I mean, there's some people waiting to do that. They're like, I'm waiting for it to be done to play all three. I'm like, you're going to burn out so quickly on that formula.
No.
Especially because the third game is going to feel so new by comparison to Remake at that point in terms of mechanical depth and, quality of life improvements. I mean, the combat in Rebirth, I think, is such a significant step up from Remake, which itself was really good, that go back and play Remake now and you're like, oof. I miss certain things from Rebirth that I wish were here now. So, I don't know.
Well, there you go. That's Final Fantasy Rebirth.
Good series, good game.